Swing, thrust, jab, stab, parry, I said aloud as I was practicing my swordplay. I had a crowd already surrounding me. I've been working hard these past few years and I've gotten quite good. At 16, I am one of the select few to soon be promoted. I get high praises from the sword masters at the fort. A few of the kids here too look up to me. I don't want to let this popularity go to my head. I just love my country and want to defend it when I get better. I'm always improving on my techniques. I'm trying a new way to stab at the wooden dummies and hay bundles. My younger swordmates had all their attention on me. They were trying to learn my moves. A few of them were playfully copying me. I didn't mind them. They just knew enough to stay out of the way of my blade. But as much fun as we were having, there was someone staring at me with hateful, jealous eyes. I saw him out in the distance. My so-called rival Dorian. Somehow, he made it up that Joshen, would be his eternal rival. We've both fought in mock duels. I have to admit, he's quite good. But he's always angry and bitter to other people here. He has a huge chip on his shoulder. Everyone tends to stay away from him. The sword masters know this and they scold him greatly for it. They tell him to focus, but he just rolls his eyes and continues to sulk and do what he wants. But today, something is off. I've seen the various moods he's in. Today, he's feeling something special. Dorian is planning something. It's been days since he's tried attacking me. I go back to my swordplay. I've been practicing for a few hours now. I'm a little tired, but I dare not show it. He is pacing around and debating something in his mind. He would stare at me and then go back to mumbling to himself. I was tired of it. His glares finally got to me. I stopped and turned around to face him. What is it this time, Dorian? What have I done that's got you so worked up? You! Dorian shouted. It should be me who is the favorite among the recruits. If you weren't here, I surely would have climbed the ranks and been hired by the guild already. Dorian stood tall, he was sure of his convictions. Some of the kids near him started to back away. Dorian arrogantly spoke, but enough of that. Rivals are meant to be defeated, and today is the day I put you in your place. Dorian opened up his cape and pulled out a strange-looking scabbard. There was an ominous-looking sword in it. It wasn't the sword we normally use as cadets. I stepped back a little. I've seen this weapon before. It's been locked in the vault. It's cursed. Dorian! Don't unsheath that sword. It's a cursed dark elf item. Master Ronaldo brought it back from battle a few weeks ago. A teacher here told all of us in class not to mess with it. Don't you remember? They had it locked away. Why would you have it? Shut up, Joshen. Dorian hissed. I was belligerent with a teacher. They had me cleaning up the vault as punishment. They had me polishing and sharpening their stupid swords. I was doing as I was told. But being in there felt weird. There was this dark, heavy feeling in there. I realized it was this sword. The locks holding it somehow fell off. Once I saw it, I knew it was meant to be mine. So I stole it. Please stop, Dorian. We haven't been trained yet in how to deal with magical items. Surely, that sword must have enchanted you. Listen to me. Forget about our rivalry. Drop the sword. It's staying. Swoosh. The sword made a strange sound as he dropped the scabbard. Dorian's face was twisted with anger as he ran at me. My eyes were focused on the sword. It looked particularly sharp. I get into a fighting stance and gripped my weapon. I'm ready. Arg! Dorian screamed. He swung the sword at me. I jumped out of the way. I could hear a swoosh as Dorian came at me again with the sword. I blocked it with my own. Our swords were locked. Sparks were flying as our swords grinded together. Dorian somehow had an unnatural strength. I shifted back a little. But he still pushed forward. This wasn't going to be an easy fight. You there, kid? I shouted at a blonde boy just a few years younger than me. I need help. Go get Master Ronaldo. I know better to bite more than I could chew. I'm not arrogant and I know when something is too tough for me. The kid and a few others ran off. The rest were fixed on the fight. Dorian would swing and I would block. A few of our swipes would connect. Our clothes were torn. Dorian gleefully smiled when a swipe of his sword drew blood from my arm. I grimaced a bit in pain, but I still fought on. But something wasn't right. Dorian is about as tall as me. But he looks smaller now. I could still feel the power in each of his swings. Strange, he was swinging upwards? I'm sure of it, Dorian was definitely shrinking. With each sword strike we exchanged, I started noticing other things. Dorian's skin was changing color. And on his cheeks there were some dark tattoos forming. I know it's the sword doing that to him. He started to stumble a little bit. His clothes were getting in the way. Dorian runs back to a safe distance and tries to roll up his clothes. I stop as well, to take a breath. I shout to him, Dorian. Look at yourself. That sword is transforming you. If we continue this battle, who knows what you would become? Dorian stepped back and looked down on his body. He was startled. I saw a little bit of fear in his eyes. For a second, I thought he was gaining some composure back. But the magic in the sword knew otherwise. He looked at me and then back down to his body. I don't care what happens to me, as long as I defeat you. Sword, I wish my clothes to be gone. The tattoos on his cheek glowed a bit and so did the sword. The clothes on him faded and then dissolved into nothingness. Dorian was naked except for the cape on his shoulders. I could hear whispers and chattering from my swordmates. Dorian is not what he used to be. Standing before us was a dark-skinned, androgynous elf-like person. His hair was shaggy and his ears were more pointy. I was told that elves are a passionate race. I could see an angry passion in Dorian's eyes. His shoulders were smaller and more rounder. A few kids snickered as they looked at his chest. His nipples were big and pointy. There were other soft curves on him as well. Dorian's waist looked thinner. His hips were bigger than any teenager would have. The small feet he now had made him seem surprisingly agile. As I gave him the once-over, I couldn't help but look at his crotch. His thing was pathetically tiny. I didn't see his nuts. There was a tuft of dark hair above what's left of his dick. I sighed and felt a little sad over what the sword Dorian did to himself. Don't you dare take pity on me. Dorian snapped. It seemed like he knew I was checking him out. He once again came at me with extreme furor. I could feel that same unnatural strength of his swings as our weapons clashed once more. I swung my sword in defense, but Dorian was out for blood. But with each clang of our swords meeting, his new tattoos would spread and glow brighter. His body is still not done changing. There was more jiggling in his chest. He had breasts now. I took a swing at him again and he cartwheeled backwards. Looking past the flowing cape on him, there was a definitive bounce in his ass. When he flipped backwards, his legs spread apart. I saw his new, womanly vagina. I don't know if it was the magic in the air or this being the first time I see a naked woman, but Dorian was turning me on. Funny thoughts were going through my head. In my lapse of judgment, Dorian took advantage and rushed toward me once again. He raised his hands above him. Sword in the air, I got a full look at his bouncing breasts. He took one deep swing down. I tried to parry, but metal clashed on metal and it made me drop my sword. I tried to grab it, but Dorian picked it up and threw it farther away. I was at this creature's mercy. Oh, so the great Joshen has been defeated by my sexy new body? I thought you were stronger than that. I've finally beat you. Dorian twitched and shivered. This makes me so happy. Dorian grabs one of his breasts and gives it a hearty squeeze. I love my new self. If I could do this to you, imagine what power this sword and I could have over others. I could see a lustful gaze in Dorian's eyes. He was relishing the moment. I could see his muscles tense up. I focus on Dorian's eyes and back to that sword. I think to myself, yeah, I'm going to die. Dorian licks his lips as he gets ready for the downswing. I felt like closing my eyes, but I was taught not to face death that way. I tense up, ready to be struck down by him. Stop right there, Sylvana. It was a deafening roar. It was Ronaldo and his mage, Syriac. Dorian angrily turned around and faced the huge mustached man that was our sword master. Dorian was paralyzed and his face went white with fear. Even the old Dorian knew not to mess with him. I thought I killed you already, wench. No matter, I shall enjoy doing it again. Ronaldo looks at his comrade, Syriac. While I cast a spell on my sword, do try to contain the wench. Dorian trembled and stepped back in fear. The cockiness he had when fighting me was completely gone. He totally forgot about me. Dorian's eyes were now fixed on some new enemies. I managed to scramble up from the ground and slip away. The hairs on my arms were tingling. Ronaldo and Syriac were casting something powerful. With pleasure, my liege. Syriac hissed. The slender reptilian-like man always left a chill to whoever he met. As I looked around, I see some of my younger swordmates running away and collapsing in fear. Others were stuck in place, trembling as well. We were still not used to such crazy battles. Dorian was scared, but he didn't give up. He ran screaming towards Syriac, hoping to take a slice out of him. Glowing, arcane symbols were rising from the ground where Dorian was stepping. He tried to evade and jump around, trying to avoid the spellbinding circle. But to no avail. The glowing symbols stretched themselves into ropes grabbing Dorian. I think no one could escape that magic. The sword slipped from his hands. Each rope seems to sap his strength. Dorian was trapped. That was too easy. Syriac replied. You put up a better fight before we killed you. It seemed he was a little disappointed that it ended too quickly. Wench! Ronaldo shouted. He cancelled the spell on his sword. How dare you attack my brothers in my own citadel? He curiously stepped closer to Dorian. Ronaldo carefully walked around and examined the restrained elf girl. He ran his gigantic fingers through his short hair. Dorian tried to shift away, but the magical circle held him tightly in place. Ronaldo lustfully smelled the silky, brown elf's hair. He grabbed Dorian's exposed breasts and roughly kissed him in the mouth. Dorian squirmed. Ronaldo's facial hair was tickling him. Giving up, Dorian relaxed. He closed his eyes as he seemed to enjoy the kiss. Ronaldo stepped back and spit in disgust at the ground. "You are not Sylvana. Your lips are bitter, hers were sweeter." Ronaldo shifted his body into a swordsman's stance, ready to draw his weapon. I ran in front of Ronaldo. He was confused. "Stop, Master Ronaldo. Don't kill him, help him." I pleaded, "That isn't Mage Witch Sylvana, it's Dorian. That sword changed him." Ronaldo glared at Syriac. "I knew letting you bring that cursed item here would cause us trouble." Syriac looked down in shame. Ronaldo continued, "Fix that poor boy, no girl. I don't think you can take away the physical changes, but at least clear her troubled mind." "I'm sorry, child," Syriac hissed as he walked towards him. See, there was potential in this sword. With more study, a powerful sword master could have tamed it. But I see it's now bound to you. I guess I will have to train you harder to master it." Dorian was silent, but he nodded in agreement. Syriac pulled out a staff, out of nowhere, and spoke a few words in some weird language. Sylvana's sword levitated off the ground and started glowing. The arcane circle that held Dorian disappeared as well. But Dorian was now floating high in the air. The tattoos on her body glowed and peeled themselves away. They floated in the air, moving towards the sword. In multiple flashes, each one went back into it. Ronaldo grabbed the falling sword and placed it back in the scabbard. The glow surrounding Dorian started to disappear. Syriac's magic was wearing off. She was going to hit the ground pretty hard. I positioned myself to where I think she would land. I barely caught her as she fell into my arms. I felt the soft slenderness of her back and I touched her firm thighs. I was looking down at something quite beautiful. I sighed, realizing that I was staring too long and hard at her breasts. I shifted my body to better hold her up. Her chest raised and lowered with each gentle breath she took. My heart was beating faster. I thought about kissing her, to see if she would react. As I got closer to her, ready to plant my lips to hers, Dorian finally opened her eyes. I pulled back a little bit. We stared at each other awkwardly for a few seconds. She stretched her body and I struggled to hold her up. "Well, are you going to put me down or what?" Dorian replied. I bent down on my knees and she jumped down to the ground. Dorian stood up and looked at her new surroundings. She stole a peek down on her body and back at me. I was staring at her new body and she knew it. "Don't think that this is over between us, Joshen," Dorian replied playfully. "I still consider you my rival. I have to retrain myself and fight you once again fairly." Dorian adjusted her cape and it covered up her breasts. "I'll just have to take this small victory as motivation, for when we next meet, I will be the greatest sword master." Dorian walked away from me and went towards Master Syriac. "I think I'm in love." I couldn't help but stare at her swinging hips and jiggling ass as she walked away. "I've been defeated again," I say aloud.